Flame. Warm. Comfortable. Useful. But where a flame can be a friend, it can also be a destructive, lethal enemy.
911, what's your emergency?
I have a fire.
Where?
Just east of Chevron Park. Look to your right. So it's up on top of the rocks. Now all I could see was right where it's burning around this big rock.
Yeah, they just advised it has jumped the main line. They've had to pull all their equipment off, and so it's headed your direction. And this thing has no indication of this.
Among the most destructive forms of fire is wildfire, responsible for the catastrophic loss of millions of acres of our forests, lives, and property. Central Oregon's wildland-urban interface, that zone where forest lands and civilization overlap. It is here where the threat of wildfire is most intensely felt.
I saw a small plume of smoke coming up from way across the river and didn't really give it a second thought.
It was early August 1990, Aubrey Hall fire. At that time we thought it was an abandoned campfire, and we found out later it suspected arson.
Okay, we're about 5 minutes from hitting the Entrada Lodge, it looks like.
About the time I got to the Entrada Lodge, you could feel the heat of the Aubrey Hall fire through my open window of my car.
I couldn't see the trees in my front yard because of the smoke.
What we're going through right now is we don't know whether we're homeless or not.
We found out what had happened to our home when I believe it was one of the fire crew told us that he had been on the property. I guess there's nothing that can really explain how you feel when you walk back on your property and find everything you own is gone. It's devastating, and it's almost like a death, because it's not just your stuff, but it's who you are and the things you own that define who you've been in the past and the things that really mean something to you. There's no way that you can replace those things. And so I guess it was just something that almost drops you to your knees to see everything you own gone up, and it's a 2-foot pile of ash.
When the Aubrey Hall fire occurred in Bend, it was a real awakening for the citizens of Bend. All of a sudden they were really aware that we live in a fire hazard area. And there was a movement to see how not only could we fight fires better, but what can the individual citizen do?
It was a landmark for us, and we learned a lot of lessons from that. And we got together and formed committees to improve interagency training, interagency cooperation. We developed the Multi-Agency Coordination Center.
They all came together with one focus: how can we prevent catastrophic wildfires?
This collaborative effort led to the development of Project Wildfire.
Project Wildfire is a group of county, state, and federal members, along with homeowners associations and individuals who are concerned about wildfire here in Central Oregon. The group includes everyone from elected officials, members of the BLM and the Forest Service, and Department of Forestry.
Project Wildfire, when it first started out, we were on pretty tentative grounds. We had no money. All we had was a group of people who had a desire and one focus. We've tried to keep that focus by keeping a variety of people involved.
I think one of the most unique and interesting parts of Project Wildfire is that it brings together not only certain segments of the government, but it blends us with quite a few members of our community, and we actually get a real cross-culture of collaboration from the neighborhood association all the way up to the federal government, and that's really unique in this area.
Project Wildfire has a flagship program, the Fire Free program, which encourages residents to create and maintain that defensible space so that their house can survive a wildfire.
With Fire Free, residents are encouraged to trim trees, remove brush and pine needles that accumulate throughout the year around their homes. They gather this woody debris and bring it to collection sites where it is accepted at no charge.
Originally, the Fire Free program, when it started, produced about 9,000 cubic yards of that woody biomass debris that came from making defensible space. And now we're collecting about 200,000 cubic yards. Now 200,000 cubic yards translates to about 50,000 tons. As an added benefit, we take that material, grind it up, and convert it into clean energy.
People like the idea of contributing to that. As soon as you tell them, well, not only are you doing your defensible space, you're doing your job, but we're taking all that stuff and we're producing clean electricity. So folks have really become enamored and they like the idea of their contribution with that.
Through its partnerships, Project Wildfire facilitates the development of community wildfire protection plans and secures grants for hazardous fuels reduction on private property. The priorities in the CWPP and the grant funding augment public agencies in their effort to reduce the threat of catastrophic fires on public lands.
Began working with the community out there to create defensible space around their properties, and then we put a quarter-mile treatment around that community.
Because of this collaboration, homeowners have become more aware and therefore more accepting of the benefits of treating fuels in the wildland-urban interface.
What that's really done is allowed us to do fuels treatments adjacent to private properties. You know, in the past we were 5, 10 miles, 20 miles out into the forest because that's where we could make a difference. Now we can go right next to the properties and people understand why we're thinning. They understand it's going to visually look different, and they also understand that it's going to make a difference the next time a wildfire rolls into their community.
The county and the fire departments have aggressively began communicating with homeowners and building rapport with them so that they change some of the customary processes that they maintain around their homes.
The center of Fire Free is the individual responsibility for your own property to create defensible space, which means 30 to 100 feet of reducing the flammable vegetation around your house.
I thinned some of the trees. I got rid of some of the less hardy lodgepole pines. I limbed up my trees to 6 feet. I got rid of a lot of the undergrowth, the ladder fuels, the bitter brush and juniper. I moved my wood piles away from the house. I cleared the area from under my deck, and I got rid of all the pine needles on my roof.
I feel that the fuel reduction, the efforts we've put in, increase the value of the home. Aesthetically, it looks better. Certainly from a wildfire standpoint, it's much better protected now than it was when we moved there 6 years ago.
We know from good fire science that if you have defensible space between 30 and 100 feet out from your home and non-combustible building construction type, that without even intervention of a fire department, you have an 80% chance of surviving a wildfire. Those are really good odds.
Almost 20 years to the day of the Aubrey Hall fire, another fire broke out down by the river, actually about 400 feet in front of my home. Thankfully, we had participated in Project Wildfire and the fire-free cleanups, and I firmly believe had we not done that, my house would have burned down that day because we had cleaned up all the fuels, the ladder fuels between our home and the river. And so once the fire got going, it really didn't have as much fuel to make it climb up the hill toward my home. So for me, that was the day that I knew 100% that Project Wildfire had saved my home.
The fact of the matter is that we haven't lost a home to a wildland fire since 2003.
Through our education programs at Project Wildfire, we have been able to see an increase in awareness and really move towards what we call a fire-adapted community. And by that I mean a community where residents actually get it. They understand that they're responsible for their own property and that in just a few simple steps they can create a defensible, survivable space where wildfire isn't going to destroy their home.
In the last 20 years, I've seen a lot of public behavioral change. People understand now through good quality education, good engineering principles, and also enforcement of local laws, that it is their responsibility to be a good steward of their property.
When you know that there are things that you can do that will change the behavior of fire around your property, you live much more comfortably.
I feel a lot more confident about knowing what I need to do to keep my property cleaned up and safer.
I am not nearly as intimidated by the thought of wildfire as I used to be.
Increased confidence in a safer community demonstrates that Project Wildfire is a success. But where do we go from here?
The challenge with a growing community in Central Oregon is that you have a lot of new people coming in. And so the efforts to educate the community have to be ongoing.
Using its partnerships, Project Wildfire offers a number of tools and incentives to reach homeowners, including printed materials, community presentations, and assistance in developing community wildfire protection plans. One of these incentives is the National FireWise Communities Program.
The term FireWise actually came about in 1993 to describe what we wanted to try to convey to homeowners and to people who live in high-risk areas, that you can be smart about protecting yourself from wildfire.
Aubrey Glen was one of the first FireWise communities in Central Oregon.
Aubrey Glen's Homeowners Association did a fantastic job with collaboration, working with the government departments, mitigating those fuels.
They came together as a group and in one fell swoop certified their entire subdivision.
One of the reasons we initiated the FireWise Communities recognition was that we knew that the vast majority of the problem is already existing. You have existing homes, existing communities that were built sometimes back into the 60s and 70s, where you've got to resolve that problem that exists.
Using tools such as FireWise and FireFree, Project Wildfire will continue to build fire-adapted communities.
We realized early on that Project Wildfire and FireFree and that education component needed to be a year-long approach. Here we live in a fire-prone environment, and we are attempting to become a fire-adapted community where everybody understands that this is where we live, this is what we're going to bump into every summer, and that there are steps we can take to mitigate the potential losses.
We're never going to get rid of wildfire. We're in an area known as Lightning Alley. We'll get 5 lightning storms lasting 3 or more days every single summer.
It's not if a fire will happen again in the summer, but when.
I could cover fire 25 hours a day and it still wouldn't be enough.
Who has an update on a fire that came dangerously close to homes on Sunday.
It's the most important thing that we cover every year.
Fire crews were busy all weekend and they were on guard today as the skies turned gray and dangerous.
We have to continue this. This is not something that is done initially in a single year or multiple years and then stopped. It's an annual process, and it has to go on and on and on.
With the ongoing commitment and dedication of its partners, Project Wildfire will lead Central Oregon into the future. A future where wildfire, though a continuing challenge, will be met with confidence, awareness, and action.